Sean Turnell worked as an economics advisor to the democratically elected Burmese leader Aung San Suu Kyi. In February 2021, the Burmese military launched a coup, arresting Aung San Suu Kyi and seizing control of the country. The military caught up with Turnell 5 days later at his hotel in Yangon.
I'm just being detained at the moment and perhaps charged with something. I don't know what that might be. Some people have just arrived, actually, so I'm going to hang up.
Right, okay, we can hear voices, but you're okay? Yeah?
Yes, I am okay.
Turnell was charged with violating state secrets. He spent 650 days in prison. He was found guilty after a trial in September, but was suddenly released under an amnesty marking Myanmar's National Day. He touched down in Melbourne 10 days ago, where he was reunited with his wife, Ha Vu. I want to take you back a few days. How did you learn you were being released?
It was all very sudden. A couple of the young prison guards came up to me and said, "Sean, good news, you're going home." And I said to them, "Look, you're not kidding, are you?" They said they weren't, and I had about 10 minutes then to pack everything and be taken out of the cell.
What did you take with you?
I didn't take very much at all. The most precious items I had were my books. And I hesitated because they'd become my friends, these books. But I thought, well, they're much better left in the jail where they could form the core of a new library in the insane prison.
Let's go further back. Why were you in Burma?
I was in Burma to help the new government of Aung San Suu Kyi to drive the reforms. So I'd known members of that new government for many years. I've been sort of involved in Myanmar things for nearly 30 years, and I knew Aung San Suu Kyi as well, and she'd invited me to come over to help them with the reform process. Yes, I was doing that from 2016 all the way up to the coup, with one interruption with COVID, where I was stuck in Australia for a while in the middle.
At the time that you went back, there were rumours that a coup was possible. Why did you return?
There were rumours, but the rumours were... I mean, Myanmar is a land of rumours, as, might be imagined. So it's not so much I didn't disbelieve the rumours. I certainly knew there was anger and there was division and that the military could easily have done this. So I was under no illusions that they might want to do it. I didn't think they would do it because it just didn't seem to make sense to me.
And in that week when the coup happened and Aung San Suu Kyi was arrested, why didn't you leave at that moment?
I tried. So at that time, of course, we were still in the middle of COVID, so the only flights in and out of the country were those special evacuation flights. So after about a day or two, I could read the writing on the wall, in a sense. I thought, no, they're possibly going to come after me, and I got some specific warnings on that. So I tried to get out, and we'd sort of just begun to line up some flights when suddenly I was arrested.
Who warned you that you might be in trouble?
A number of people, a number of diplomats and so on, and some friends of mine who were more obviously in danger than me got out. And then one final warning from somebody in the hotel where I was at, a message to me, 4 a.m. the morning I was arrested, to say, look, Sean, the hotel security system and the security cameras have been taken over by the military during the night, that the cameras were focused on my door, and that if I could, it was time to get out.
And when you got that message, what did you do? I
packed, made my way down to concierge, extended the credit card to pay for the period I'd been in the hotel under quarantine, but I could feel the policemen forming in behind me out of the corner of my eyes. I could just, there's about 20 or 30 of them beginning to move in on me. And by then it was all over.
So you were charged. Just tell me what they were accusing you of.
So they were accusing me of two things. One was just a holding charge, immigration, but the main one was a breach of the Official Secrets Act, which was an old British colonial law that dated back 150 years. So I was being accused essentially of possessing documents, transferring information from the government to outside. So in a sense, I was being accused of being a spy. That was, in the early interrogation, they'd actually told me very directly, you work for MI6.
There was a period there where you disappeared for a while. No one knew where you were. When did you first speak to your wife after your arrest?
So it was about 2 weeks in, when I was in this terrible place that I called the box, which was just this windowless room where I was just held for the first 2 months, as you say, completely isolated. So I spoke to her about 2 weeks in, but then I disappeared again for a long time.
How hard was that period?
In that first 2 months, I had nothing. I was in again, this thing called a box, which was sort of like a shipping container, one of those 20-foot shipping containers. No windows, concrete floor, metal chair bolted to the floor in the middle of the room, ankle chains and wrist chains on it, which would put on me at various points. But yeah, devoid of any reading material, anything to stimulate your mind. So I spent 2 months there and just sort of adapted, really survival strategies. Like animals at the zoo, the first thing you do is start pacing, so I did that, and I would count my steps, which was oddly comforting. I found just counting. And then thinking of all the strategies of like trying to think of naming all the presidents, naming all Australian prime ministers. And I got that one quite easily, but it took me a while to get all the presidents. But yeah, anything just to keep active and to keep panic at bay. Just to, occupy my mind.
Did the panic come sometimes?
Yes, most certainly. Yeah, many times. And just the extraordinary situation of it. I was thinking, how on earth does a sort of, mild-mannered little professor from Australia end up here? This was one of Southeast Asia's most notorious prisons, there were many dark times in that. But I would sort of pull myself together, and I knew the support that was coming from outside, and so I thought, well, okay, you've just got to get through this. It'll be okay.
And you're by yourself in this period. So what human contact are you having?
So the only human contact was the interrogators, who would come into this room at all sorts of odd hours. In fact, I think they deliberately came in the middle of the night, asking questions. And initially the questions were, I think, just designed to intimidate and demoralise. They were stupid questions that there were no answers to, So, but then after a while they started to hone in a bit more to try and entrap me to say something about Dora Aung San Suu Kyi or someone else. But yeah, that was the only contact.
Did they ever threaten you?
Implicitly, yes. At one point they said, again, the special branch said, you will never see your wife and child again. And I remember that one quite distinctly. And they would do sort of odd things. They would have one of the interrogators in front of me, and then the other would wander behind me. And again, I was sort of chained to this chair, and I couldn't quite see them. But I always felt, I might be struck or anything like that.
Does any of that stay with you?
Not really.
Physically, I mean the physical...
No, I think the thing that stays with me, the worst physical moment, was being placed in a van and driven to a nearby court just outside the prison for a remand hearing. And this van meant to hold about 20 people. There were 50 of us. We're all chained together, pushed into the back of the van. The heat was terrific, and sweat was pouring down. People were vomiting around me and fainting. But we're all locked in so tightly that you sort of couldn't fall, which was a saving grace.
In that, after the 6 weeks, when you managed to speak to your wife,
yep.
Can you just describe that phone call to me?
A mixture of being greatly relieved to talk to her, upset, of course, because, you're missing them so much, and suddenly their voice is there, my daughter's voice as well. But also, just that anxiety. Okay, there's lots of information I'll get across. And I remember on that same call as well, the Australian ambassador was there, and she said, look, Sean, can you describe where you are? Where do you think you are? And I said, look, I think I'm on some sort of facility just outside the walls of insane prison, but I wasn't 100% sure, but I thought that's where I was.
Did you feel guilty for putting her into the position that she was in?
Totally. Because I'd experienced this before of friends who'd been imprisoned and so on, and I knew the pain of it and the anxiety. And so, yes, as it turns out, she rose to the occasion extraordinarily. And the one constant comment I've got since coming home from all sorts of people around the world, is just how extraordinarily strong she was. So she rose to the occasion, but I felt terribly guilty at what I'd done to her, and I was thinking, this wasn't part of the deal. This is not in the marriage vows.
You were moved to insane insane prison. It's a particularly peculiar name, but that is
Yep.
its name, insane prison. What were the conditions in insane?
The physical environment was horrible. It was a concrete cell with old rusty iron bars, completely open to the elements. And of course, open to the elements in Yangon means monsoon, it means incredible heat, it means insects, rats, these horrible big scorpions that would come into the cell. But the upside, of course, was that I was with people and with other political prisoners. And I'll never forget the moment a very young political prisoner came up to me and said, "Sean, you're safe now, you're with us." But I do remember having the feeling, well, yeah, I'm with you, but we're all in here. But they were fantastic. The other prisoners saved my life.
How so?
All sorts of ways. Again, I'm an ageing academic. To say I was out of my comfort zone doesn't even begin to describe it, but they were able to help me just in all the little things like getting a dish or a spoon or a bucket or a cup or a blanket, because I had nothing. The Australian Embassy got me some stuff, actually, that I had in a bag, but there was lots of other stuff that I needed that, nobody knew what I would need, and they helped me with all of that.
How were things brought into you?
So delivered by the embassy and through a friend of mine, Curtis Slover, an American who had stayed basically to help me.
And what was in the parcels?
Food and books.
What sort of food?
So this is a great story, actually. So my wife baked Anzac cookies, raisin oatmeal cookies, her wonderful fruit cake, which is always lots of alcohol in it to preserve it, all that. She would cook them here in Sydney, seal them in airtight bags, send them to Canberra, where they would go in the diplomatic pouch from Canberra to Yangon and then be delivered to me. And not a single one went bad. The seals remained all the way through, and that was wonderful because, it really the smell of home. I used to open the bags and just smell the aroma of the baking, and it was such a good moment.
What was happening to your physical health at this time?
It went up and down. The core remained okay, but I got sick often.
Was your health deteriorating?
Yes. So, I got COVID multiple times. You'll get stomach issues because, again, the food was neither good nor served in sanitary conditions. So it was very easy to get sick.
How was it served?
In a bucket. In insane prison, it was a proper bucket. In Naypyidaw, Myanmar's capital, where I was shifted up for the trial, it wasn't even that. They were dirty old construction buckets that had been full of paint, and the paint stains remained on the outside, and this very thin bean soup was sort of put in, and another bucket would have rice in it, but you had to use your own spoon to get the rice and get the soup out, and so of course everyone's doing it. So by the time you get the bucket, you might be 50 people into the process, and so if somebody else has got a disease, it's going to be in the food.
When you were transferred for the trial, was that a moment of hope or the opposite?
Yeah, I would say the opposite, but also just a complete charade. So, the trial was an absurdity, frankly, and the journey to it was an absurdity as well. You go into a court that had all the accoutrements of a court, a judge, prosecutors and lawyers and all that, but the process was ridiculous. I wasn't allowed my own interpreter. Which was greatly inhibited any sort of contact I would have with the lawyers or any sort of due process. I knew from the beginning there wasn't any process, that as soon as the charges were laid, the verdict was 100% assured.
And Aung San Suu Kyi was in the same jail. Where was she in relation to you? So
she was probably 100 metres away in a little sort of hut building which had been newly built. It was just a bare room, essentially, with a small bathroom off it, big windows with no curtains on the windows or anything like that. No facilities, no TV, no, as basic as you could get.
Were you able to speak to her?
Yes, I spoke to her every week. We had a half an hour at the beginning of the trial day to talk about things, and we talked about everything, actually.
Did she apologise to you? Did she at all?
She did. In fact, I think that was the very first thing she said. She said, "Sean, I am sorry to you, to her, your dad, and your whole family for involving you in our problems." I think was exactly what she said.
I want to come back to her. As well as the phone calls, did you talk to her in the cells?
Yes. Yes, I did. And in fact, that was also, particularly early on, in one of the early calls, we agreed at a time where we'd be thinking of each other. I think from memory it was 5:30 a.m. Myanmar time, which was about 10 o'clock Sydney time, and we said, okay, as soon as the clock strikes 10 or 5:30 a.m, we're going to be thinking intensely of each other and having a conversation with each other. Now, obviously, we couldn't hear each other, but just the knowledge that she was thinking intensely about me and I was thinking intensely about her was good. It felt like we were in contact. And I would even say, oh, darling, are you there? I was quite convinced that she could hear me.
You came to understand some of the work that Ha was, the incredible effort that she was making behind the scenes. Just one question, did you notice a change in tempo with the change of government in Australia?
Yes. It was noticeable even to me. I could pick it up in what Ha was telling me, but even the tempo of the deliveries and so on, there was quite a distinct change. Even just things like the demands for meetings, the demands for the phone calls. And I was able to get sort of a feel that they were broadening out to interactions, bringing in US interlocutors, UK, Vietnam, really playing ASEAN and so on. And of course, Penny Wong made a number of very strong speeches, as did the Prime Minister. And I heard those in the prison. I felt really chuffed the day that I heard that Anthony Albanese had made some comment, and that went all around the prison.
So you've come to understand the work that you had. You understood. You had some sense of what Ha was doing.
Yep.
You have your conversations with her. What happened when you saw her?
It was just a magical moment. It was in Melbourne Airport, and we just looked at each other, and both of us, I guess, had thought of that moment. What do we say? And would it be awkward? But it wasn't, of course. It was just ran at each other, I think, and sort of collided out of like a scene of the movies, and just so many things to talk about. So, I've been back a week now, a little bit over a week now, and so now it's sort of me trying to understand all that's gone on. I'm trying to understand where Myanmar is, the economy is and all that. But from Ha, just finding out the incredible work that so many people have done. And I'm in awe of it, frankly. I've said to her, well, certainly to her, I'm in just such debt that will never be repaid. I'm in complete default and will never get out.
And all that effort, all for you?
Yes. So totally humbling. And feeling, utterly inadequate for the attention, for, all of that. Because, I know my internal dynamics. I know the moments where I felt scared and cowardly and just wanted to come home. I just want to come home, I know all of that. And, feeling of genuine humbleness, I think, at the reaction.
Sean Turnell, welcome home and thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah.